Hello everyone, my name is Shambhavi. Hope you all are doing well. So basically today we are going to see an example for the type 1 and the type 2 errors, right? You remember that in the previous video we had discussed that what are type 1 and type 2 errors and what is null hypothesis, what are the outcomes for that. These are the things which we have already discussed in the previous videos, right? So basically now today we are going to see some more things regarding the type 1 and the type 2 errors, and other than that we are going to see some examples related to the type 1 and the type 2 errors. Right, so let me just brief you in the previous video that what we had done so that you can just correlate with today's video, right? So in the previous video, we had seen the outcomes and the type 1 and the type 2 errors. So the outcomes were that the decision is to not reject H naught when the fact H naught is true. That is correct decision. We had seen about the correct and the incorrect decisions, right? These were the four types that come here, right? So the first one was that if the decision which you have taken, the decision is not to reject H naught when the fact that H naught is true, correct decision. Now basically what is H naught? So let me just go on to the one more previous video, one more previous things which we have written here. And yes, here from here we are just getting to know that what we just meant from H naught and what we just meant from HA, right? So H naught was my null hypothesis and HA was my alternate hypothesis, right? H naught was actually referring to my null hypothesis and HA was actually referring to my that alternate hypothesis, right? So you remember that we had discussed these cases. Other than that, basically, if I just again move on to the last section like this here. So here basically we were discussing about the H naught and H, right? We were discussing that what is the correct case, what is the wrong case. So in that basically we got to know that if the decision is to not reject H naught, that is basically the null hypothesis when the fact H naught is true. So basically when the H naught, that is the null hypothesis, is true and you are not rejecting that thing, so in that basically you are making a correct decision. After that, if the decision is to reject the null hypothesis, that is H naught, when in fact the H naught is true, so that is your incorrect decision, and that basically comes under the type 1 error, right? Then next was that the decision is not to reject H naught when in fact H naught is false. So that was also your incorrect decision, and that actually comes under the type 2 error. And the decision is to reject H naught when in fact H naught is false. So that was a correct decision on whose probability is called the power of the test. Right? These are the things, and we had just like summarized that thing in a very short like table, which is this. Now you can just understand on your own. Other than that, we had also seen that what are the denotions for the type 1 and the type 2 error, right? So type 1 is alpha and type 2 is my beta, right? Alpha was my probability of rejecting the null hypothesis when the null hypothesis is true. That is my probability of my type 1. And beta was basically the probability of my type 2, and that says probability of not rejecting the null hypothesis when the null hypothesis is false. Right, so now basically I will be just discussing some more things regarding the alpha and the beta, and after that we'll be seeing some examples as well. So we'll just start writing here. Okay, like this I'll just close it. So I would just write alpha and beta my these H naught and HA, right? This is my hypothesis. So type 1 and type 2 errors, alpha beta and type 1 and type 2 errors, right? So alpha and beta should be should be as small as possible. So this is one thing that comes here, that alpha and beta, that is my type 1 and the type 2 error, they should be as small as possible. Now what's the reason for that thing, right? Why basically they should be small? So in that case I'll be writing because they are the probabilities like this, LITI, probabilities of error. So basically these are the probabilities of error, so they should be as small as possible. And next case that comes is that they are rarely zero. So basically you will like rarely be able to see the probabilities of the error as zero, like the value for alpha and beta you will rarely be able to see them as zero. So that basically does not comes in manual way, that basically you'll be able to see the zero. So that is not the case here. Okay, now basically we had even seen about the power of test, right? In that basically if you have taken a correct decision, so in that was also where the probability was called as the correct power of test, right? Right now just I have repeated that thing as well. So I'm just writing some things regarding that power of test as well. So I will just write the power of the test Okay, the power of the test is basically that is 1 minus beta. Okay, if you just want to calculate the power of the test, so that is basically 1 minus beta. So in that case, I would just add on one more thing here, that ideally we want a high power. Ideally we want a high power that is basically that is as close to 1 as possible. Okay, so basically ideally we want a high power that is as close to 1 as possible. So basically increasing the increasing okay increasing the sample size can increase the sample size can increase the power of the of the test, right? So basically what is this are all the things that I have just written about the power of test here. So this is the power of test is 1 minus beta. First of all, if you just want to calculate that thing, so you'll be writing out 1 minus beta. Okay, beta is basically my type 2 error. That is okay. Other than that, basically ideally if you want to increase, if you just want a high power that is close to as 1 as possible, so in that case, basically if you just increase the value for the sample size, okay, then in that case the power of your test will also be increased. So as soon as you increase the sample size, the power of the test will also be increasing. Right, this is the case that comes with the this power of the test. Right, now we had seen. Now let's see one example regarding the type 1 and the type 2 errors. Let's see that basically if you just get a question like this, how we are gonna write out the type 1 and type 2 errors and how to basically proceed on with that. Right, let me just quickly take a new color so that I can just start writing out the questions as well here. So let me go on with this one. Okay, just 1 second right here. So my example, my question comes here to me. Okay, right here my question comes like this, that basically my question is suppose suppose the null hypothesis the null hypo suppose the null hypothesis h naught is Frank's Frank's is basically a name like sample name which I'm just taking. Okay, Frank, Franks, right? This Frank's rock climbing equipment equipment is safe. Now basically this is the hypothesis which I am given here, that suppose the null hypothesis H naught is Frank's rock climbing equipment is safe. This is the hypothesis. Now basically from this hint, from this question which I am just given here, from this I just need to find out the type 1 error, the type 2 errors, after that the probable alpha, the beta and all those things I just need to find out and write it from here. Right, so basically it's how to proceed on with this thing. Let's write that here. Let me just come down so that I can just write that properly. Okay. Now moving towards my, first of all I'll be moving towards my type 1 error. So that is basically type 1 error like this. Now basically what we had seen in the type 1 error, let me just write it out, write that thing here, after that I'll be explaining you. Okay, so type 1 error is basically, let's say that is basically Frank okay, Frank thinks that his rock climbing, that is rock climbing, Frank thinks that is rock climbing equipment equipment may not be safe, may not be safe when when in fact in really, that is basically in the reality, in really is safe, in really is safe. This is my type 1 error which I would be writing from here, that Frank thinks that his rock climbing equipment may not be safe when in fact in really it is safe. Right, this is my type 1 error which comes. Now moving towards my type 2 error. Type 2 error. Okay, let me just come down here. Basically, okay, just 1 second. Let me just quickly take the eraser from here. Let me remove this out from here. Let me just write out the correct denotions for the type 1 and the type 2 errors, right? So let me just take the same color once again. So one is like this. and 2 is simply like this, right? This is the correct denotion for writing out the things, right? Now basically moving towards my type 2 error. So in my type 2 error it comes that Frank thinks that his Frank thinks that his rock climbing equipment may not be safe, may not be safe when when in fact it is not safe. It is not safe. So only the difference in my type 1 and the type 2 errors are that in the type 1 error I have just written that Frank thinks that his rock climbing equipment may not be safe, but okay, not bet it was when in fact it is safe. And in type 2 error I have simply written that Frank thinks that his rock climbing equipment may not be safe when in fact it is not safe. Only this is the thing that comes between both of these. Right, now if I just want to write out the alpha and the beta thing, so how will I be doing that? So basically what is my alpha now? So basically now my alpha is probability that probability that Frank thinks probability that Frank thinks his rock climbing probability that Frank thinks his rock climbing may not be may not be safe. In fact it really is safe. Okay, in fact in fact in really it really is safe. Okay, so this is my alpha. And what about my beta? So my beta would be my probability. So that would be my probability, and everything will actually remain safe. Probability that Frank thinks that his rock climbing equipment may be safe when in fact. So I would just not write the whole thing now again repeating that. I would just simply write it after the in fact. Okay, all the things are same as the alpha only. Only a little bit difference is made. So in that case, in fact, it is not safe. In fact, it is not safe. Right? This is the thing that comes here. So from here, what we can just conclude, what we can just say from here. So I can just write that here. First of all, what the thing you need to notice. Okay. So notice that in this case, in this particular case which we have taken, notice that in this case the error. Okay. The error with the error with the greater consequences is the type 2 error Okay, now basically how can I just say this thing very surely that it is the greater consequences are for the type 2 error. Now read out the question once again. Suppose the null hypothesis is H naught, is Frank's rock climbing equipment is safe. Okay, it is safe. So my type 2 error says me these things only, that Frank thinks that his rock climbing equipment may not be safe when in fact it is not safe. Right, so this is my probability of type 2 error, that is my beta, which is coming, and from that we can just say that notice that in this case the error with the greater consequences is the type 2 error. Okay, this is the greater consequences error, right, that I am just occurring it. Okay, because in my question it is basically asking me that the basically the climbing things for the Frank is actually safe, but in my type 2 error it is saying that it is not at all safe. So in that case the greater consequences are with my error, that is type 2 error. Right, so I hope that you have got a clear and a fair idea that how we'll be solving out the questions for this type 1 and type 2 error, and even we had seen some more real things regarding the alpha and the beta. Right, so we'll be continuing these things in the next video. So this is all for this video. Till then, thank you and take care.